Welcome, everyone, to this week's edition of Last Stop Penn Station presents the poster. Wait a minute. I got to catch myself. By popular demand, Cary, because you have so many posters, this is now the posters of the week, plural.
Hopefully it is by popular demand, but there's enough to go around. So why not show a couple of them?
Yeah, why not? And we've had a great response so far. We've gone through a number of great vintage wrestling posters. If this is your first time joining us, I'm Ring of Honor announcer Ian Riccaboni. This is Ring of Honor ambassador Cary Silkin. And Cary has amassed a massive collection of vintage wrestling posters dating from the 30s.
There's a couple from the 30s, and I've gotten some... Prior to us doing this, a common question is, how come there's not posters from the Attitude Era or, when WCW, the Nitro era?
Right.
And that's because they stopped making them.
Yeah.
So when I was doing Ring of Honor, when I was the owner of Ring of Honor, we brought back some posters, which we'll be showing on the poster of the week. The posters of the week also. We had some really nice ones. The Madison Square Garden one,
right. Some
beautiful ones from Manhattan Center and the Hammerstein, and we did some oddball ones. I was thinking, might as well go old school and just try to distribute these and just get the word out. What do they call it? Grassroots promotion.
Yeah, there you go. And I always like the ones that you did for New York when the folks from Noah came over. Those are some great ones as well. So you'll be seeing some Ring of Honor posters. You'll be seeing some vintage wrestling posters, everything in between. But Cary, you've been promising something really special today. We've upgraded our setup. We now have a beautiful easel, courtesy of Basan Creative and Web Design, who helps us produce these. We have a great cover. It's a mystery. It's like when Jim Cornette says anything that comes out of a box gets over. From what you've hinted at, I think what's under this is going to be over. Shall we?
Go ahead.
All right.
I'm not going to.
Right. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, you weren't lying. This is a list.
Where would you like to start?
Holy moly. So I think everybody who's watching this probably knows the folks that are pictured. I'm sure we'll get to them. Let's start at the bottom because I'm noticing right out of the gate there's 4 big advertised matches. It's from Madison Square Garden. It says no TV. I know we said start at the bottom, but my eyes keep going back to the top.
I see 2 things at the top that, and you just mentioned one of them, the no TV, which is telling the people you have to go see this live. This is not going to be on television. And so get your tickets and come live. The other thing, and I think you would have picked up on this, what day of the week during the heyday were most Madison Square Garden shows?
They were usually on Monday.
Very good.
And WWF and Capital TV was usually on Saturday. So this actually makes even more sense why they'd say no TV.
Right.
Because they're running a live event on a Saturday.
And it's Madison Square Garden, which is the old Garden, which, just in case you didn't know, was 8th Avenue between 49th and 50th Street, where now such great establishments as the
M&M World is up there, right?
I was thinking of the Varishi Family Peepery.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right.
There's all kinds of stuff there, but that was the Garden, which I attended, the old Madison Square Garden one time. No, not for wrestling. My parents took me to the circus.
Ah, yes.
But let's talk about this poster. I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, that's incredibly interesting. The no TV makes a lot more sense. They really wanted to emphasize it because it aired on Saturday nights.
Absolutely.
So didn't want to be mistaken for a live airing. We'll go to the bottom. Tickets, pretty cheap, $1.50 up to $5 for ringside, taxes included. 4 other bouts. So again, you'll see 8 matches. Pretty packed card. Firpo versus Milano. So Firpo, I'm assuming, is Pampero Firpo.
It is Pampero Firpo.
One of the main inspirations for Randy Savage, who Randy Savage gives a lot of credit to.
Oh, yeah.
For inspiring what he did.
And I want to give a shout out and a lot of credit to great legend Kevin Sullivan, and he's also he lived it, but this is even before his era. He was a kid, and he pointed out to me that there's a Mario Milano who had a career in Australia with Jim Barnett. It was a big star, and he came to New York. But it's not that Mario Milano. It's Carlo Milano. I don't know if it's his brother, his nephew, or somebody. But that, it was not, the more well-known Mario Milano. And let's quickly talk about the 4 other bouts.
Oh, you have the card in front of you. Okay,
yes.
All right.
Yes.
And what year? I mean, judging by the stars, 59-60 is?
Yes, this is 1960.
1960,
March 19th, 1960. And another thing should be noted, Vince, there was a war going on for the building. Vince McMahon Sr. ran shows there at times, but this period of time, it was Jack Pfeffer.
Oh, who presented a lot of the oddities like Bruno San Martino.
Right, and Buffalo promoter Pedro Martinez. They were the promoters. Okay. And the 4 other bouts, let's see if I have them here. Pat Kelly, who Kevin said he just remembers him as a TV guy, wasn't really a star. Against Vic Christie, who was a star in L.A. Then you had Skull Murphy.
Right.
You've heard of him.
I know the name. Yeah.
And he was usually in it was Brute Bernard and Skull Murphy they had a long tag team career, but Skull Murphy was a good name. He wrestled not Mark Lewin.
Okay.
Who had a brother named Ted Lewin and had a third brother named Don Lewin.
Wow.
And Don Lewin, Kevin told me, was a World War II hero. He didn't stay in the business very long. Somehow he gained great wealth as raising fish.
Okay.
I don't know if he was
That's the only place you'll find this kind of information, folks.
Salmon farms or whatever. And by the way, the other brother, Ted Lewin, thank you, Kevin, went on to be an acclaimed artist.
Wow.
He was commissioned to do this and that.
Nice.
So it was Don Lewin against Skull Murphy. Then Tony Altamore.
One of the Sicilians.
Who we saw in one of our earlier Poster of the Weeks.
Right.
Against the mighty Zuma.
Who had one of the largest box offices in Madison Square Garden history facing Argentina Rocca.
That's right. And he was... I was in gathering this information. I was looking at the order of the matches in 1960. This is the 5th card, and Zuma had 2 matches against Rocca, and he was going down the card,
which is incredible because he blows up the box office with that huge single match, rare for Rocca at the time, and all of a sudden just goes right back down.
And supposedly he wasn't very good. He wasn't a very good wrestler.
Gotcha.
But he was a good draw. And the last of the 4 was Angelo Savoldi.
Okay.
Who at one point he passed away, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago. But at that time he was like the oldest living pro wrestler. Like he made it into his 90s. But he was taking on Prince Maivia.
Oh. Now,
we don't know. Kevin seemed to think that it was not Peter Maivia. There was a Nef Maivia also.
Gotcha.
So it was one of the 2 Maivias. So those were the opening attractions. We talked about Firpo and Milano.
Right.
And thanks to Ian and also available on ad-free shows, the 55 and 5.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about this tag match? Because
sure.
you taught us a little bit about some of these guys that we wouldn't have known.
Yeah, we learned that the Iron Russians were actually a team of Lou Newman, Shoulders Newman, and Hans Schnabel. which was one of my favorite wrestling names. But they were the Iron Russians, and they changed their look. They came in, they had a little bit of a big run in New York. They took on Chief Big Heart, who was the regular tag team partner of Chief Sonny Warcloud. And both Chief Big Heart and Sonny Warcloud were proud Native Americans. And Sonny Warcloud was actually personally recruited to wrestle by Jim Thorpe. That was the fun fact in that episode. And you can see and listen to the Lou Newman episode and the Sonny Warcloud episode, 55and5.com. They're in the compilations on ad-free shows. So, yeah, I always saw the Iron Russians, and I thought, well, maybe, did Ivan Koloff start yet? And I always tried to figure out who it was. But no, it was Hans Schnabel and Lou Newman.
And Chief Big Heart, at the very beginning of my TV wrestling, watching wrestling on TV, he was still wrestling for WWF, and he was sort of on the way down. But he had a long and very strong career across the country. And the McMahons Senior, at least, well, even up to Tatanka, they always like to have an American Indian wrestler. So big tag team match, which brings us to the co-feature. And by the way, this, as we mentioned in the last poster of the week, or one of the two, I got this from the Carl von Hess estate. Wow. This is one of the posters with Carl von Hess taking on Bruno Sammartino, very young Bruno. He'd only been wrestling for a year, but he was second on the card.
Right. And this would have been the time. This was before he won the title in 1963 by beating Buddy Rogers. This would have been about the time where he starts to have the falling out. He was in and out real quick in New York and kind of gets almost banished.
Well, he did.
To Toronto.
Exactly.
More or less. And then
almost quit the business completely.
Can you imagine? I mean, we would have missed out on Bruno's sellout streak, on those huge cards. And Carl von Hess, of course, was one of the German sympathizer. We learned on 55 and 5 that Carl von Hess was really the first to make the leap beyond what Hans Schmidt was doing, beyond just saying he was German, wearing the Iron Cross, wearing some of the offensive iconography. And so I imagine that was probably a hot match with Bruno trying to beat up the man who was insinuating he still had some sympathy toward what happened in World War II.
And that takes us to the big tag team. Before we get to the tag team main event, and I was talking to Kevin, and we were looking at these five cards from 1960 that were all promoted by Pfeffer and Pedro Martinez. There was no world title.
Interesting.
That, they weren't recognizing Buddy Rogers. They weren't part of the NWA, or if, Thez or Carpentier or whomever might have had the belt. So they just left the heavyweight title off,
Really?
Yeah.
Not even the big time championship in Boston, not even the NAWA.
But for these particular runs, so those Raka Zuma matches were just, and that was just like
a big one-off.
But it wasn't a title match.
Wow, okay.
But Raka and Perez, who were from the late 50s through the early 60s, were the main event in almost every Garden show. Were part of the famous riot.
Wow.
That caused them to put the law in to have not allow 14-year-old kids to go to wrestling and boxing, and taking on the Graham brothers. And am I putting you on the spot here? Do you know which two Graham brothers these are?
One of them would have been Jerry.
Correct.
And I'm going to blank on the second.
Eddie Graham.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. And do you know if they were managed by Bobby Davis at this point? I know at one point,
I don't know,
when they were the WWF.
I should have asked Kevin.
U.S. tag champs, they were, but
I probably were. They probably were.
But he could have been touring with Buddy Rogers at the same time too. So this is about the same time where he had kind of a hand in everything. So.
And I recently found a program, not a poster, it was a program where it was all three Graham brothers.
Okay.
And none of them were brothers.
Right.
But it included crazy Luke Graham.
Right.
But here was the classic Graham brothers team of Eddie and Jerry against Rocca and Perez. Do I have the results here? Let's see.
Interesting thing about Miguel Perez, his son went on to wrestle in the WWF.
Yes.
In the Attitude Era.
And I became,
Eddie Graham.
Well, I became friends with Miguel Perez Jr. in Puerto Rico. Doing the Lucha Libre magazine.
Mm-hmm. And then Eddie Graham, his son was Mike Graham, and they ran Championship Wrestling from Florida for many, many years.
And of course, Rocca and Perez won because they didn't want to have another riot. They won in 2 straight falls.
And that was usually what would happen in Madison Square Garden. The big main event tag matches were usually best out of 3, right?
Yes. And it was very, the crowds were a lot of Latin people, and they definitely did not want to have a problem there. So they didn't even lose a fall. Silly me to wonder who won. But that's one of our posters of the week.
One. All right. So we have 2 this week. What a poster to start. We're not going to be able to top this, Cary. This is a gem. Jeez.
Well,
bring out the big guns.
Okay. Well, let's, I don't know if we're going to top it, but I got a real beauty coming up.
And Cary, through the magic of video editing, we are now at poster number 2. I'm excited.
Before we unveil this, I just want to say it's one of my favorite posters because of the design and the colors. And we reproduced it in Ring of Honor back in 2014 when Adam Cole took on Jushin Liger at the Hammerstein, and my friend Joel did it. And but let's see the original here.
All right, let's take a look.
Harken back to 1968.
1968. All right. We hadn't yet landed on the moon. Woodstock had not yet happened. Wow. I've seen this one a number of times. This is when you walk into Cary's home, this is what you see. Now, I don't even know where to start. This one is all over the place, kind of in a good way. It's one of the iconic shots of Bruno Sammartino. If you ever see him with the championship, that's usually the picture that they have. The first thing I'm going to call out, one of the main highlighted items is air conditioning. They are advertising the fact that if you come to this event,
it's August.
It is August, and there is air conditioning in this Baltimore Civic Center. So,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's, you would think I would think it would be advertised as WWF presents, but
it's not.
They had Super Attractions Promotion. So they must, this is pre-Gary Juster, by the way.
I was going to say, this is not a Gary, even though it's Baltimore, it's not Gary Juster.
Gary Juster took over Baltimore as far as the promoter, but this is...
this is a beauty.
15 years before that.
A beauty of a poster. The matches, and this one started at 8:30 also. Was that a common time?
Yes. And we're going to get to a few posters in the future where they have that oddball 840 or 845. But the 840s I never really understood. Yet you could always get in the building, doors open at 7. Well,
the air conditioning. You got to get in and get cold.
But what a card this is. At the old Civic Center, which I believe...
That's where
I think it's the same Civic Center that they ran for many years.
And that's where Superstar Graham beat Bruno for the title, right?
Yes.
Because they didn't want to do it in Philly or New York.
And this was also the same building that NWA went to.
That's correct.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So before we started out with the prelims before we can even get to the prelims, I see highlighted big girls, little girls tag team match. It's almost like a limerick. It's almost poetry.
Well, when I pulled up the card, I was expecting to see a ladies match, and then a little girls match.
Yeah.
Well, there was both.
Really?
It was all in one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
Who was in this?
It was the Fabulous Moolah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And Diamond Lil,
who was a smaller woman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they got the win, by the way, against Barbara Owens and Darlene Dagmar.
Okay.
And it was in a 2 out of 3 fall match.
What an attraction.
And I spoke with Kevin. I said to him, he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, Diamond Lil, she was a nice looking lady. Or is it, do I have it right? Darlene Dagmar, one of them was very unattractive, very homely.
Yeah.
But Diamond Lil was a sharp. And I said, hey, did any of these wrestlers try to, maybe
make a move?
Oh,
geez.
And he goes, absolutely.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then he went on to talk. Don't want to get off subject here. He went on to talk about the male midget wrestlers who used to, they had a lot of action, but and not just in the ring.
Okay, I read between those lines. Thank you.
But yeah, that was the big girls, little girls tag match, of course, with Moolah's team winning.
Sure, and Diamond Lil, I believe, lived with Fabulous Moolah for a number of years.
A lot of women did.
Right. So we go to the 3 other matches. I'm curious. This is 68. It's Baltimore. There's probably going to be an interesting name that folks would know on the undercard, because it wasn't uncommon at this time to see somebody on the come up be featured in these opening bouts.
Well, let's see what we have here.
Tony Altamore's back. He's facing Lenny Solomon.
There you go. Tony Altamore again. He defeated Lenny Solomon. I remember seeing Lenny Solomon, and one of my ticket broker friends, was Richie Birnbaum. Matter of fact, if you go to last Stop Penn Station and you hear our stories, the legendary Pigface Stanley,
right,
when he was hanging out trying to escape his landlord, Richie Birnbaum's father saw Stanley hanging out of the second floor. But Richie knew Lenny Solomon.
Okay.
Lenny Solomon was a Brooklyn kid. And he found his way into wrestling. And the only other match
there's actually, I don't see any other thing that's not advertised.
Well, maybe it didn't make it into the
results,
the online results. But the Altamore Solomon 12-minute bout is the only one. But let's talk about Victor. Do you know who Victor Rivera is?
I know the name. I know he was a mainstay in WWF, and I know Earl Maynard had one of the best physiques in the world.
He was a legitimate Mr. Universe.
Wow.
And via Trinidad or one of the island countries, he lived in the UK, and obviously he wrestled, but he was a bodybuilder and competed in these what's the right term? Is it bodybuilding?
Fitness bodybuilding.
Yeah. And he had a good run in WWF. Now, Victor Rivera was supposed to get the belt.
Really?
After Bruno lost Ivan Koloff and Pedro Morales, they had sent Victor Rivera to Los Angeles to the LaBelle territory.
Right.
And something happened, and they changed plans, and Pedro Morales had that nice 2.5, 3 year run.
Wow.
And Rivera eventually came back in, you could see on All Star Wrestling.
Right.
And some of the MSG shows. He came back as a heel, which was strange. Yeah. But he was a baby face, and I think he had a tag. At some point, he had a WWF tag title at some stage. Actually, I'm messing this whole thing up. It's Rivera and Maynard against
Bull Ramos and Gorilla Monsoon. Gorilla Monsoon's the layup here, obviously. He was built from Manchuria, right?
Yeah. I mean, do you think of Gorilla Monsoon ever as a heel?
No, he was so jolly and joyous and welcoming as an announcer that it's tough to imagine that. But I've seen him versus Bruno. I mean, that's one of the first Bruno matches I ever saw.
Yeah, he was a terrifying bad guy when I was a little kid. He was managed by Wild Red Berry,
who we always gave shout outs later on. Yeah.
And I know I think I mentioned this on our podcast, but Red Berry did all the talking, and Monsoon would just stand there with his arms folded with Ray Morgan when they would do the interviews for the, coming to the Madison Square Garden next month. And one time, Gorilla Monsoon, who, as you said, he hailed from Manchuria.
Right.
So one time, Gorilla Monsoon, as the interview was over, just looks at the camera and goes, "This time, I'll break his back."
Wow.
So he was this guy. I was like, whoa, he speaks. Oh, man.
In reality, just a nice man from South Jersey who helped Larry Sharp get the Monster Factory started. But that's neither here nor there.
And then
we did skip Bull Ramos. Anything on
I'm
Bull?
sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Bull Ramos. Yeah. He came in. He wrestled all over the place.
Yeah.
He had a big run in Portland. He had a big run in Texas, on the West Coast. Stocky guy, came into the WWF when I was a little kid, and he had a really good run. As a matter of fact, I think him against Bruno might have been either the first match at the New Garden or the last match at the Old Garden.
Wow.
But great heel, and that should have been a very exciting tag bout, and which now brings us to our special attraction.
Right. Eduardo Carpentier, a big time attraction, former NWA World Heavyweight Champ, correct?
Yes.
And taking on the Kentucky Butcher, I think Virgil the Kentucky Butcher.
And whose real name was John Quinn.
Oh.
But guess what? Eduardo Carpentier, and thank you, Kevin Sullivan, once again, did not show up.
Really?
And it turned out to be Virgil defeating Arnold Skolin.
Oh.
And Kevin told me that he probably didn't show up because they wanted to put Kentucky Butcher over.
Yeah. And
Carpentier was one of these guys where, similar to Emil Mascaris,
doesn't want to do the business.
He's not going to, if he's going to lose, I'm not. So he says, I'm not coming to Baltimore.
But this wasn't on TV. They didn't take TV in Baltimore.
Air conditioned. So a big match like that for him just not to show.
Got to be disappointing.
Very disappointing.
Yeah.
And there's the main event with Bruno against. Are you familiar with?
A little bit. Dr. Bill was kind of a bigger, stockier guy too.
And there were the Miller brothers. There was Danny and Bill Miller, and he was a legitimate doctor, but he was a veterinarian.
Interesting.
Yes.
So there are people that mention, say, Ian, why do you keep working? Why don't you just do Ring of Honor? I give them the same answer. I like what I do. I'm assuming Dr. Bill Miller continued to practice veterinary medicine.
Yeah, and he wrestled under a mask a lot. He
really?
was a Mr. X type,
okay.
or Mr. M in AWA, Verne Gagne promotion. Had a long career. He was a very big. He was a big guy, maybe 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah, he's a large man.
And the Miller brothers held the old WWF Tag Team Championship for a while, but. What a beauty.
What a beaut. And spoiler, Bruno wins. Bruno continued to win for another 3 years. But wow, this is an absolute beauty. And just stunning.
And by the way, thank you. And hopefully this is accurate. Bruno won at the 13-minute mark via a half crab.
Okay.
Now Bruno used the backbreaker and the bear hug. And I've never heard about him using a crab.
You know what? Bill Miller's a big guy. So I'm assuming maybe he couldn't get him up for the backbreaker, or maybe maybe it was too grueling of a match and he couldn't get him in cinch the bear hug in.
There you go.
So Bill, if you haven't seen what Bill Miller looks like, we encourage you to Google it. That's a glimpse of his head, big stocky dude. Bruno was strong, but to get Bill Miller up, now I want to see this match, and there's no tape of it.
There's no tape.
But wow, heck of a poster, Cary. Heck of posters. Thank you so much for sharing these today.
Oh, it's our pleasure, and we'll have a couple of we're going to go around different territories. We're not just going to do WWF. We're going to go to the Crockett territory, NWA, and some of these oddball territories. So all kinds of interesting posters coming up on the Posters of the Week on Ad-Free Shows.
Oh, that sounds great. We thank you for joining us here on Ad-Free Shows. If you want more of Cary and I, check us out. Last Stop Penn Station, where we talk tales of Ring of Honor, talk tales of Cary's journey through the 70s and 80s in New York City, and so much more. Check out 55and5.com, where Cary and I go through the entire 1955 Parkhurst wrestling card set, one by one, and give little history lessons like this here in 5 minutes or less. And for absolutely more, keep it locked in on adfreeshows.com, where you can find Cary and I all over the place. Thanks for joining us this week. Happy wrestling, and we'll see you next time on Posters of the Week.